why we don't want to be on the south side. Anybody? This is a dialogue, right?
Can I share an experience?
Absolutely. Will you make the mic, sir?
No. I don't.
Oh,
I build houses in Frenchtown and in Griffin Heights. And I build the same houses that they build in Tallahassee and in Southwood. When I show those houses to black people and tell them what the price of the house, the price is actually it's really discounted compared to the same house in Tallahassee or in Southwood. And I give them a deal where they're coming in with at least $20,000 worth of equity. And when I give them the price, guess what they say to me? I'm not paying that much for no house in Frenchtown. And no matter how much I explain to them about the equity, the value of the equity that they will have going in, it doesn't move them. It doesn't move them at all.
indeed. So we're talking about value. So the conversation, I believe, sparked in a post in one of the Facebook groups, Family Alumni Group, when a lot of people came in town for the family homecoming and saw all of the development going around. Some of these people hadn't been back in 10, 15, 20, 30 years. And so now they see the development and they see all of this development around FAMU, but they don't see a lot of people that look like us as in me, and me as in a black woman, right? They don't see a lot of blacks a part of that opportunity, right? That's because we don't see the value on the south side so other people see it. Yes, ma'am.
Is it because we don't understand the long game, right? With this talking about equity and all of that stuff. So I bought in Myers Park.
Yes.
Oh,
you're my neighbor. Okay, I'm sorry.
Super hood adjacent, right? Like,
yes.
But one, I'm from Chicago, so like that was fine with me.
Yeah.
I like a little diversity, anyways.
Yes.
But two, I lived off of Palmer, and I know what is happening going south, and I know that the long game, which is why I decided to buy my property there, I'm gonna be all right.
Yeah.
I'm gonna be all right. But because I understand the long game, do you think we don't get that?
So, a few things I want to unpack tonight, and I'm not one to talk a lot about statistics and this and that. So I did bring an exercise that I want to work through, because one thing I do know that people understand is numbers and cash. And usually the perspective will start to change immediately. But I'm going to go back to the one word that you guys can say it with me: value. So we don't understand value. You're from Chicago, did you say that? So you're not local, but local people don't want to be on an area like the South Side. Someone like you come from Chicago and down to DC, Virginia, all of these places, you guys see a different value than we see it. So you'll come in and buy in the neighborhoods that the local people are renting from, values will go up, and then those same local people try to buy in that neighborhood and they can't afford it, right? You can't afford to get in your neighborhood anymore. So grandmama's house, who grandmama broke up back and get that house, you don't care nothing about that. You're trying to get to Calarn, you're trying to get to Tallahassee, you're trying to get to help me somebody, Oxford, instead of seeing the value in our own neighborhood.
That is our measure of success, getting out of the hood.
It is. Instead of turning our hood into what? The measure. You better come on with it, team. All right? So that's what I want to talk to you about. So what I'll do is, because I believe we're going to talk about opportunity, and Mr. Chris Daniels, he may be able to rattle off some numbers. He's a professor. You know, I'm not going to keep it, all right? So I'm just messing around. So I can't give you the numbers, but I know it's a lot of vacant, dilapidated houses on the south side. All right. So as an investor, what I do is I go in and I purchase these properties for a number of different strategies: Airbnb, rental property, buy and hold strategy, fix and flip. But what I have in those properties is ownership. And with ownership comes what? Equity and control. All right. give you an example. Let's consider you are a renter, right? And you're renting and there's an HOA, and you have an issue with the HOA policy. What can you do as a renter? Complain to the owner? Right? You have no power. You have no voice. You have no control because you have no ownership. So I would implore you all that if you are even thinking about one, let me back up. I got a minute to back up. How many people are homeowners here in the room? So we got a few that are renters. So I tell people all the time, just get you a piece of land. Buy what you rent. It could be a 2-bedroom, 2 bath. You just want to control something. You want to own something before it's out your reach. Because what's happening is everyone in Chicago is coming in and taking some of the ownership from Miss Tallahassee. Okay? I'm not even gonna talk about gentrification in here today. I just want to stay on y'all case because I need for you guys to change your perspective and your mindset so that we can see value on the south side. All right? So what I want to do is, Miss Nicole is going to help me. I'm going to pass out. I know everybody got a calculator. I hope you got a pen. If you got a phone, you got a calculator. And so I want to just give you an example of some of the properties that we're able to get on the south side of Tallahassee. So we want to talk about some numbers. I like to get to the nitty gritty. I don't want to talk above, below, in the cloud. So there is a triplex that I'm currently renovating on the south side of Tallahassee, right off of Okaloosa Street. Dr. Bryos used to own it a while back. You may know Mr. Bob. Mr. Bob knows everything about Tallahassee. Right next to the Al Lawson building, Caddy Corner, okay? So I want y'all to write these numbers in. The purchase price of the property, somebody just give me an idea on what a triplex, that's 3 units. All right, the 2-bedroom, 1 bath, what is that going for on the south side of Tallahassee? It needs work. Oh, I like it. In a minute. 150? 140. For time purposes, I'm gonna give y'all some of these numbers. So the rehab, the purchase price was 140 for 3 units, which means what did I pay per unit? So how do we find it out? Divided by 3. How much?
47 rounded, 46.
So let's say 50,000, just for easy numbers calculated. Just pocket that number, okay? So the rehab per unit. Give me an idea. I need new floor, new kitchen, new paint, AC system.
You doing it, or somebody doesn't do it, or like?
No, real people do, no, we do real work. Yeah, we do real work. Certified, licensed and insured.
20
Okay.
grand. 40.
I say 30.
30? So let's run the numbers at 30. No matter of fact, I want y'all to pocket that, but I'm gonna tell you what was in my budget for it. 35,000 for the entire triplex. For the entire triplex, 35. Now we hit a little snag, let me be honest, called termites. All right? So that budget now looks like 60,000 for the entire triplex.
Wow.
All right? So now we are at 140 plus 65,000. That was the total for rehab. Closing costs on that loan is 5,500. Y'all write these numbers because we're gonna talk about this in a minute. This one to get real. So all in cost is what, if somebody has calculated that? 210,500. Oh, they didn't bring all these numbers over here.
That's what she does now.
So, so after all of this work is done, does anybody have an idea of what the new value is?
So did you have it appraised prior to,
I did,
so did you do schematics and stuff and get like a post rehab value?
yes, after repair value, yes. So somebody give me an idea of the new value with all of this new work being done.
About 250.
300?
300. So now, we're gonna talk about opportunity, because it's opportunity for people to invest on the south side. So I had two investors, one came in at 25,000, the other came in at 35,000. Okay, y'all write these numbers down? The strategy, anybody have an idea on what my strategy is for this triplex?
You gonna rent it? Was it a rental?
It's a rental. So it is gonna be a rental and an Airbnb, but it's gonna be, I'm a cash out refinance, which means I'm going to refinance the property and pull out some cash.
And go down the road and buy some more?
And go down the road and buy some more. Now, okay, I just wanna keep this basic tonight, because we're talking about value, alright? Alright, so on that 25,000 for 6 months, my investor is gonna make $2,500 on 25,000. My investor at 35,000 is gonna make 3,000 in 6 months. Now, I could be here all night talking about that, but I won't, because that's another point that people don't understand finance and a return on your investment. We're gonna pocket that, but that's another conversation. So now I am in at 65,500 to pay off my investors, and what do I have? An asset on the south side, value. Okay? So now the property has already been rented, all 3 units. 1 unit for $2,000, I'm sorry, $2,100 a month. Unit 1,
How much a month?
$2,100
For 2 bedrooms?
for a 2-bedroom, my bad. I'm doing short-term rentals, flat rate $2,100. The other 2 units, one $900, one $950. So what am I making? They're all 2 ones. So one for $900 and one for $950 and $2,100. Huh? Yes, 3 months.
So I wanna back up for a minute.
Uh-huh.
So, so the original purchase cost,
Mhm.
did you pay it out of pocket or did you finance?
I financed it. That's where the closing costs came in. Okay?
Your business finance it, or did you personally finance
Business.
It doesn't matter. They want her behind on the line. She still had to be a personal guarantor, guaranteed.
And I still own the asset.
it? Did you personally finance it?
I did not.
You didn't?
I did not.
Who you know?
I know some people.
I don't even know
I
these
know some
people.
people. I know some people. Okay, so that's what, $39.50?
Yep.
All right, so when I do a refinance, this was the second sheet, at 300,000 at a 4.5 interest rate for 30 years, my monthly payment is gonna be $1,520. So I'm cash flowing how much a month? $2,430. $39.50 minus $1,520. You said it's $2,430?
20, 2430.
$2,430. Now I gotta add taxes and insurance, so that's rounded to $1,650. No, that's rounded to $1,700. So 3950 minus 1700.
Robin,
Mhm.
are you putting in reserves on that?
I need to. So add 1900. Thank you, Ms. Aaron. She gonna keep me together now. She keep all us together. That's my big sister, she always know. Yeah. So what what I said, 1900. Do 1900
Plus 1900?
minus.
Wait, hold on.
Right, let's change to 729.
Come on, Nicole.
It's 19.
Nicole. Right. You got so much to say.
So that's cash flowing $22,050 per month, okay? Now, let's multiply this by 12.
4551.
Who got any calculator?
It's all
Give us 25.
So for one asset, it's gonna be a cash flow of 24,600, right? That's passive. That's just flowing to me. Multiply it by 10 years.
Add zeros.
Yeah.
So, yeah, that would be what, 120 times 120? That ain't right.
That's actually zeros.
Yeah, it's a zero. It's all a zero.
Is it 242? That's it? Okay. So for 10 years on one asset, $246,000. But we don't see value on the south side. Because we won't run up a house to stay dilapidated, we don't pay the taxes.
Say it, girl.
We don't let you
Say
the south
And I
side.
come along and pick up every one of them.
You can Mr. Butler, but this is what's happening. Miss Chicago coming in town, Miss DC coming in town, investors from Atlanta coming in town, everybody coming in town right up under our noses. Because we don't see the what? Value, right? Now let me add a little something to this. I can put 4 more units on that parcel. I can build 4 more units on that parcel. So now, let's just imagine the 246 times 2. So in 10 years, on one parcel, 7 units, let's just say I make 650,000.
492,900.
What is it?
492.
Why add a little bit of inflation and all types of stuff in there, but let's just say 500, that's easy calculations, right? It will actually be more than that because it's 7 units total that's going there instead of 6, but that's fine. Now that same little unit, it was ragged looking, y'all just ride on by, ooh. I will even show some of my first time buyers these same properties. Oh, that's too much work, Ms. Robin, that's too much work. Because we don't see the what? Value. And it's a way that we can do this collectively. But we have to, one, see the value, and 2, we have to learn how to cooperate and stop competing with each other. Okay? And you also have to understand finance, and that's why these conversations are so important. Because your $5,000 can make a difference somewhere. But you gotta understand, you're not gonna make $30,000 on $5,000. But you ain't doing nothing else with your $5,000 either, with property doing it. And if you got it in the bank, you're making what, 27 cents? So we gotta change our mindset and our perspective, because what's going to happen and what is happening on the south side, if you ride through, this Miss Southside sitting right here, she can give you the rundown. Okay? I'm from Bartow, I'm from Polk County, I don't know how many of y'all know, but it's the same thing happening across the nation. I just took a love to the south side in Tallahassee, because I'm from the south side Bartow. Alright? So I just wanted to encourage you guys, and I hope that something in our conversation tonight will spark that there is value on the south side. But we cannot wait until everybody else recognizes the value, and then we wanna jump on the bandwagon, because at that point, it's too late. But right now, there are still many opportunities. You just need to get connected and plugged in and be ready to execute. Because we ain't having all these conversations about a conversation, about a meeting, about another conversation, about another meeting, about another conversation, about a meeting, and a conversation, and a conversation. We have to be ready to execute, okay? So I thank you. My name is Robin Yance, and I was honored to be able to speak with you guys this evening. Thank you.
Any questions?
What was the timeline from when you purchased the product, the asset, to when you actually were turning revenue? Like, what is your turnaround time?
2.5 months.
2.5 months, and then can I get your contractors contacting me?
Alright, anybody,
I have a question.
okay.
Ms. Robin, do I need to speak in the microphone? Can they hear me online if I talk just like this? You think? What do you look for, like, as far as investment properties? And I think I saw your property thing when I was over there. Is it close to, was it Bright? Is it close to the community store? Is it like?
Right behind.
Right, yeah. I was like, I think that's the picture. I think that's the house right
Yeah.
close right there.
Yeah.
Yes, I've been watching it. But what do you look for? Because right now, like, I'm at a point where I've gathered some people that we're trying to do some like real estate investments. I do have some very knowledgeable people within the group, but I've noticed that people that don't mind working in groups and collaborate and bring together more resources and make a greater impact. But what do you look for on initial investments? Like, do you look for, my daddy said, look for the best house on the worst block or the worst house? I don't know what terminology you still, but that ain't worked yet. So, like, what do you look for as far as initial investments? We're just getting into it.
Oh, okay, sorry. The numbers. I really look at the numbers. And if the deal makes sense, I don't go into, that's a bad location. You know, me personally and my investors, we just look for the numbers. That's what we look for. If the numbers make sense. Yeah, because we purchase in some of the worst neighborhoods.
I have one last question. So you want me to talk about it? So I noticed that you advertise your ride-alongs, and I would love to advertise those for you, but I need, I guess, at least like see what you're doing your ride-alongs. So if you want to just, so I know what I'm talking about when I'm advertising to people. Okay, all right.
Also, I get to make my marketing move now.
Talk about the ride-alongs.
No, I'm just kidding. So, I do have what I call, real estate ride-alongs with Robin. I have one coming up this Saturday, November the 13th. It is not free, it is $4.99, it includes some lunch and a t-shirt. But most of all, you're going to get a lot of value. The reason why I don't do it free is because I want people to take very serious the information that I'm giving. Because literally you can go and replicate, whichever one of the words fit, what I'm teaching you, okay? So what we do is we go to and tour different properties. On this one, we're going to 3 properties. One of them will be that triplex. And I'll walk you through what was done. We'll talk about the find, how I found the property, how I fund the property, how I fix the property, and then how I bring in investors to make that deal work. Because a lot of times you want to talk to people about investing, but you don't know how to propose that. You don't know what type of returns. You don't know how to structure those deals. So that's what I talk about. The second property that we're going to tour is a 7-unit apartment building that we're renovating. And so we're going to walk through that and talk about that on the commercial side, because the commercial side is where the money is, okay, people? And then the third property is in Benton Hills, and it is going to be a 15 upwards of a $700,000 rehab. Sale once we get done with the rehab. So 3 different levels of renovation, 3 different strategies, in 2 different areas. So south side, northeast side. Okay, you can find me at No Kent with Yent on Instagram, and I Flip Renters on Instagram as well. And thank you.
Got 2 more questions.
On average, how many investors do you typically have when you're going into these types of projects?
It varies on the project. Some projects, I would have more spread than others, so it really just depends on the numbers and the project.
Can you speak a little bit about like the certain risks, like say for example, like those numbers look great on the board, but for example, if you don't get renters into your properties like right away, how do you leverage that problem?
What you say?
I said Airbnb.
Everybody on this Airbnb page, right?
So what I do is as soon as I get a property, if I know that I'm gonna be renting it, I start advertising it right then, okay? And then the second thing is I will partner with a property manager, someone who does that for a living, because it's all about getting the correct tenants and getting qualified tenants. So I get ahead of it, honestly, all right? And sometimes I'll give you, I got 1 second, 1 minute, 30 seconds. So what I do is, I just go with the hustle. So their triplex was supposed to be ready for family homecoming, and I was expecting to make 6,500, but it wasn't ready in time. So what did I do? I parked people in that parking lot. I let them just come in that parking lot. I'm gonna get creative, okay? So sometimes you have to get creative. That's a part of being an entrepreneur. That's a part of being a small business owner. That's a part of being an investor. You have to be able to pivot, and you gotta pivot fast. And so that's what I do. But as far as the rentals, I get ahead of it. As soon as I close, I'm already advertising.
All right. Thank you, Robin. Anybody got $5,000 in right there? All right, our next presenter is Dr. Christopher Daniels. I went to the opening of the flats over on Palm Beach. Evan, Palm Beach Street?
Palm Beach in Maine.
Yes, in Maine, and he's done a phenomenal job with that. So I actually had Chris on my show on Monday, and we talked about ownership as a way of manning up, for Man Up Monday. So welcome, Dr. Daniels. Give Chris a round of applause, please. Fancy presentation, look at him. Yes, what you need? Christy, Henry, Kingdom First Realty, will you come up to the stage, please? Can you please join us? She said she here to learn, but, all right, just tell the people who you are, what you do.
I do what Nicole tells me. Oh, hey, y'all. I'm Christy Henry. I have the distinct pleasure of being a real estate broker here in Tallahassee, Florida, with my husband, Carlos Henry, Carlos Henry. And we are on Kingdom First Realty, a full-service real estate company that operates from the capital to the coast. So we have clients all the way over in Pensacola, and we refer over to Jacksonville because that ain't our market. We also line up partners like Robin, and we cooperate with a lot of different investors, a lot of different contractors and builders. We work in partnership through collaborative called Community Lift, where we are working together to make sure that as African Americans, we have a voice and visibility as contractors and builders and investors in our community, so that we can obtain this thing called equity that everybody keeps talking about. And when I think about equity, it's two lines. First line of equity is that margin between ownership and what you own, because they're two different things. So that's a micro level. And then when you talk about community equity, it talks about how we own our communities, how we derive values from our communities. I'm sure Chris is going to get into a lot of that in his presentation. But I just want to encourage you, as I was listening to Robin earlier, that's really what she's talking about. Because over time, as you accumulate assets as a community that looks like a community or that lives in the community begins to own that community. And there's no other communities in this nation that struggle with community ownership like people of color, African American communities. And I'm sure Antoine can attest to that with the work that he does with Habitat. First level is home ownership. The second level is investment. And the third level is collaboration and financing. When you can fund other people's deals, That way you're making entirely passive income, and we can begin to create capital in what we call credit deserts within our community. So with that being said, thank y'all for the mic and, wonderful presentation, Ron.
Hey, how's everyone doing? Who was it? Oh, huh?
Keep going.
Oh,
Okay, you good, you good.
How's everyone doing? Hey, it's how you, so I see you come in. I see you found the food. Bro, we got another commercial break. We get this technology, I'm not as tech savvy. Be Easy Graphics, Brian White of Be Easy Graphics. He is normally, you know, it's not his fault. You know, Brian, I called Brian at the spur of the moment he came. He don't normally dress like this on my events. So I'm wondering where his Chris was before he got here. Listen, Kayla Lewis, come on. I want you to come. You got a commercial break. Come on. So as a child, as a youngster, I won't say a child. I don't want to tell his age. He look real young. But as a 71 year old boy, listen, but listen, man. I used to watch you. Listen, I'm tell you why I brought you up here. I used to watch you. Listen, we used to be in Frenchtown, you know. It was like a lot of, you know, the neighborhood. Everybody know about people out. And I watched my Uncle Bill some of the nights. I'm like, oh, you look like how it's supposed to be like. And don't leave it like these are like really.
You know what he was saying?
So, give us some insight on why it was so important to do what you were doing then and why it's important to make those sort of investments in our communities now.
There you go. Put you on the spot.
Yes, sir.
So it was important for me to do that because I'm gonna tell you a story.
Okay.
I used to ride around my community and I'd see Miss Susie's house was owned by a white person. Go down the street, I see Miss Jazzy Faye over here, her house owned by a white person. I discovered that these white people was picking up property in our community through tax deeds. So once I discovered that, guess what I started doing? Initially, it wasn't that I was wanting to invest in real estate. Yes, you know what it was? I just didn't want them to have it. I just didn't want them to have it. So I started buying it. And then I finally figured out I'm an accountant by profession. My expertise is financial management and economic development. So I discovered what Ms. Yant was talking about. So I picked up these ragged houses for $1,000, $2,000 for tax deeds. And I went to a bank and I said, I had the house appraised. They told me the value was. So I bought it 70% of what the value was. I took that money, rehabbed the house. I went back to the bank, had it appraised again. Now the value of the house is a lot more, so I went back to the bank, borrowed some more money, took the first loan out, and took the difference and went down the street and bought some more property. And that's basically how it started. So then I started buying vacant lots. And I come from a long line of construction workers. Parents' father was a construction worker. My father was a construction worker. All my brothers, except for two, are construction workers. And I even tried it for a little while. For a minute. Couldn't do it. But I discovered that I could have some subcontracts to get that stuff done. And that's what we did. So basically, I picked up lots, tax deeds, and I built new houses. And we did kind of what Antoine does. We created this shared equity arrangement. And I'm giving these terms now. But I want you to know when I was doing this, I had no idea that what these terms meant, but I was doing it. So we built the houses. Houses worth $200,000. I sold them for $170,000. They come in with a little bit of equity. They bought the house. And that was my intention. I just wanted not to have people who didn't look like me owning that property. And I wanted to convince people who were leaving the neighborhood to stay in the neighborhood. So we provided some incentive for them to stay in the neighborhood and to come back. And I still do that today.
Yeah.
I have a question for you. You said tax deeds.
Yeah.
Can you speak a little bit on the line of tax deeds about things that help keep people who look like us in our property? So in neighborhoods like Bridgetown, the reason we have so many tax deeds because we start to not invest in our community.
Yeah.
So wills and trusts and things like that.
Yeah. She touched on it a little bit.
Okay.
We
I
have.
should have been on time.
If you have the Macmillans, I'm calling these names of these are real people because I picked up their houses. And right now I'm dealing with a family called the Kozaks. They won't pay their taxes for nothing, but they won't sell it to me. So I just wait. I just wait. And then when it goes to tax deed, I pick it up. So, but if the Macmillans who all moved to Chicago and New York and wherever, and the grandmother's house, she died, they just sit there, they care nothing about the house, because they're in New York or Detroit or wherever, and next thing you know, the house is run down, nobody's paying their taxes up for a tax deed sale. So, there's also a thing called tax certificate. So if you don't pay your taxes in Florida, guess what? The county and the city, they really don't care because they're gonna sell a tax certificate. The tax certificate, those investors that Ms. Jen was talking about, those folks will come along and they're gonna bid up to 18% for the tax certificate. And they're gonna make 18% on you if you don't pay your taxes. And when you finally do pay your taxes, they're gonna get 18% and they're gonna get their money back. But if they don't pay it for the second year, you hold that tax certificate for 2 years, you can force a tax deed sale. And at that point, you get your money back and you get 18%. Unless nobody buys that tax deed sale, then guess what you get? You get the property. Now, if it stays for 7 years, automatically goes to a tax deed sale, then you have to go bid. But the base bid is gonna be the taxes plus the interest that the person bought the tax deed, the tax certificate for. If they don't buy, and nobody buy it at the 7-year tax deed, then it goes to the county. The county gets it, the county puts it on the list of properties for sale. And they're gonna sell it for the base price. And that's an easy pickup. And when you buy that property, that money goes to what they call the Housing Finance Authority. You heard of them? Then they take the money and they go and use it for big deals like Magnolia, the one that's going up on Magnolia. They go take it, they seed it, do a bond financing, and all these people that don't look like me and you are building multi-family units in our community. My name is Kayla Norris Barber.
Mr. Frenchtown, right?
Thank you. Okay, so someone has made a request that you all go on your social media to the Donny Station Facebook page, please. Go your phone out. Go your phone out. Right now. Phone out. Yes, Donny Station, I know. Some of y'all ain't got no juice. Y'all got like 2%. I know it's been a long day. Yeah, I know. I already know the community chicks. I already know that y'all are working there. So go to Donny Station and share to your personal page. And like, thank you. All right. Some things we ready?
This is live on the Facebook page. We're trying to do it to reshare.
Yes, reshare. Facebook, Donny Station. DONI, Donny Station.
Okay, so I don't see where it says share.
Okay. I'll come help you.
All right, make sure y'all share, please. So,
It's not shared.
That's what it was. It's not so public.
is it?
I think the problem is that we can share.
All right, so while we're doing that, what I'm gonna do is I'm kind of speak a little bit briefly about some opportunities here in Tallahassee. This conversation has been great. I actually like this audience and the vibe that you guys have been getting off. And really, you can take this conversation whichever way you want to do it. So if you want to ask me whatever question you want to ask me, but what I'm going to do is try to present the opportunity as a whole. Because real estate, understanding real estate is understanding the the beat of the city. You have to understand the feel and the vibe of the city to know where the places are where people are going to live, right? And what you want to do is you want to own property where people want to live, right? So I was trained, in traditional real estate. So meaning I went to school for real estate, and essentially, a house, and so we got some accountants in here, right? So essentially, when you buy a house, you're buying land and an improvement, right? But essentially, what you're buying is land, right? Because that's the thing that has residual value that will never go away. So the piece of land that you have underneath your house is more valuable even than that house, even though the house could possibly be worth more. And the reason why is because the land is not going away, right? So when I first started investing in real estate, I understood that. So what I did was I bought properties that had big yards, because I knew that if I never bought another property after that, I could develop that property and I would never have to buy anything again. So actually, fundamentally, the first property I bought, I never actually even had to buy another property again. I could have made a living just off of that one property because of the size of the lot and the zone, right? So that's one thing that's very confusing about Tallahassee. And I'm getting to my presentation, but one thing that's very confusing about Tallahassee is that places that seem residential are actually zoned commercial, right? So I knew that because I've lived in several different cities. So I saw, well, the first thing I looked for was what was the zoning of the property that I bought. And then when I saw what it was zoned for, what I saw was what is the maximum density. So one of the properties, the first property I bought, max density on that property, I could have built 12 units, right? So 12 units, that's enough to make a living. If you have 12 units that are running pretty well, you can make a living for the rest of your life. So essentially, I could have made a living just off of that one purchase, just that one, right? And that's how you got to think. So my mindset has always been more on the development side and what could be and not necessarily what was, right? Because what you'll find is that everything used to be something else, right? Half these places used to be, family used to be a snake plantation or whatever, but everything was something before and then it became something, right? So everything is something now and it will be something later. So predicting what that will be and being able to get in front of that is how you really make money in real estate, right? That's fundamentally how you make money in real estate. So real estate is a very place-driven business. So just to kind of introduce myself a little bit, my name is Dr. Christopher Daniels. I got a PhD from Howard University and also have my MBA in real estate from Florida State University. My particular area of emphasis or area of expertise when it comes to real estate is real estate finance. So I really deal with numbers. My thing is finance and making sure that numbers always work. So people know, the people who know me, they know I'm like a numbers person. So what I realized was that, when I first started investing in real estate, I used to just know all these numbers in my head, but I couldn't explain it to other people, right? So I was just like, look, this is gonna make money. And I didn't know all the technical terminology, all this type of stuff. And I was like, man, let me really get the terminology down. And what I realized was that, before all these gurus came out with like BRR and house hacking and all the other, I was already doing that, right? Just because I knew numbers, right? So I bought my first place, right? Let me just give you a little story before we get into the presentation. So my first place I bought, the mortgage is $279 a month, right? And I had it rented out for $1,200. Then I had another place that I bought. So I bought two properties. When I first bought my first home, I bought two at the same time. So I bought one that was a duplex and I bought a single family home. So what I did was I did the math in my head. I said, okay, well, look, I'm gonna make sure that this duplex pays for that and my house. And I'm gonna make some extra money because I rent out the rooms in my house to other people. So essentially for the first however many years of my life, I never paid a bill for anything. So then I was able to accumulate enough money to start buying more properties and more properties and more properties. And then it just, after that point, it became easy. And then people started asking me, like, wait a minute, well, how are you getting on these properties? And I said, I'm like, I did this, I did that. And all of a sudden, they're like, well, I want to invest. So, I never really solicited people for investments. People just came to me and said they wanted to invest. And I was like, okay, well, all right, if you want to invest, let's go. Let's go do some deals. So I did some deals with some people I knew. And then it just got bigger and bigger and bigger. And then what I decided was I kind of hit a point where I was like, I really want to get more into development. So that's when I started buying the land. So I bought, a fair amount of land, a few good sized parcels near family because I said, look, at the end of the day, they ain't making no more money, right? And I've seen what happened. I went to Howard. So I saw when I was in school at Howard how there was a bunch of like empty lots and
and I came back 5 years later with Whole Foods, condos, all that type of stuff. I'm like, listen, that ain't happening. That ain't gonna happen down here without me being a part of it, right? So that's when I really got more into the development, and then I started getting more, and so what I started understanding was that in order to get involved with development, you have to understand what the city's doing, because the city drives development, right? And what I realized was that a lot of us are too late. What's happening now was planned back in 2000. What people are planning now is for 2040, right? So if you're trying to go down there and get a plan for today, that plan is gone. That plan was made in 2000, right? People right now are planning for 2040, and you're talking about 2022, right? So how are you positioning yourself to be ready for what happens in 2040? That's about knowing what's going on. So it's very important to know what's happening, right? So here's the key, right? So, Tallahassee is changing, right? So Tallahassee does not, I remember when I first came here, I was like, well, this city don't have no downtown. It really did not have a downtown. But now we're starting to develop a downtown, and that is essentially Gaines Street, right? Gaines Street is downtown. Gaines Street, College Town, those other areas, Tennessee Street, all those areas are becoming our greater downtown area. It's what we call an urban core. So you have Gaines Street, you have College Town, you have All Saints, you have Burrow Square, you have Cascades. That is like the urban core of the city now. So this is essentially our downtown. It hasn't developed into that yet, but that's actually what's happening, right? So in 5 or 10 years, that's what's happening. There's multiple developments happening, and it, you know, it's always interesting. I don't like, you know, it's funny, I teach political science, but I really don't like politics. But so when you hear people like talking about like, oh, this plan was it, these plans been out. There's no secret.
Right.
So someone acts like all shocked and outraged that someone's planning on building something. They put those plans in 10 years ago, right? So there's gonna be all types of new stuff up and down Main Street, right? And now Fannie Way, which is very, very interesting, Fannie Way is becoming one of the most popular streets in the city, right? It's actually, in my opinion, you know, I might be a little biased, I think it's the coolest street in the city. You get to ride scooters, they have the little park down there, you ride by the Railroad Square. There's a lot of cool things. There's not that many cool streets in Tallahassee, but Fannie Way is actually one of them, right? So what that is doing is bringing people back to this side of town, right? That didn't traditionally come back here, right? So most people, you know, maybe they come here to go to work, maybe for a football game, but on a day-to-day basis, they weren't coming back. We had a great event over the summer, the Soul of Southside Festival on Fannie Way, other things like that. There's a lot of other events planned. And these things are bringing people back to this area, so they're starting to see the value in the neighborhood. So there's a lot of new projects that came, right? So you have a Hyatt Hotel. So I told people, look, man, this is a multi-million-dollar, probably billion-dollar corporation decided that they want to build a hotel, you know, right on Fannie Way. That should show you something, right? Then you have the Hotel Indigo, right? Also on Gaines Street as well. You have another huge project proposed, Embassy Suites, a bunch of other townhouses, a bunch of other things planned, all where you should have a little car shop back there on Gaines Street. All that stuff is happening, right? You got Cascade Park, right? Humongous, huge project, multi-million-dollar project in Cascade Park. So what I'm saying is all of these projects are developing a new urban core and showing you where people with money are putting their money. And people with money put their money where they know their money's good, right? They're not playing games. They're not guessing. They know they're putting their money there for a reason. So as a smaller investor, what you want to do is you want to follow big money's money, right? So where is big money putting their money, and let you go run behind big money's money and make money. Because big money will make you money by default, right? So Brooklyn Yard, this is an example, right? So maybe not too many people recognize this apartment, but it used to be this on Compton Street, right? So it used to be like a very like plain brick, I don't want to say jail looking-ish, project looking-ish apartment complex, right? Now these are like chic apartments. Go in there and see who's living there. People, the type of looks at a profile of person that used to live there, and the profile of person that lives there now is much different, right? And where's Brooklyn? We in Tallahassee, right? Where does this name come from? Where did the name Brooklyn Yard come from, right? And then what are they charging compared to what are they charging before, right? And how much does people pay for this property, right? Millions for a property on Compton Street. Compton Street, and some of y'all may or may not be familiar with Compton Street, but people who've been in Fannie for a long time, that was a street that was kind of like, oh, you know, I'm not sure if I want to go down that street. I'm going to walk past it real quick. But all the way down the bottom, but once you bring family way through, now it's a whole different ballgame. Now it's one of the most valuable parcels. It's actually probably one of the most valuable student housing developments in their family. So it's a multi-million-dollar project, right, quote unquote, in the hood. Right? Used to be Routledge Point, now it's called Lighthouse at Brooklyn Yard. All right, so right up the street from the same area, you see the same thing, right? So what you see is you see new names, you see changes in the area. These are all signs. Signs. If you need a sign, this is the sign, right? This is letting you know that a lot of things are going to happen right now. It's interesting. Let me go through a couple more, and then I'll kind of give you my thoughts on this, right? So then, of course, you have the cultural pond, right? So, this used to be an area where you could drive through to get to Main Street, but now, they put the retention pond there, and they call it actually a park, actually. And then now they're calling this cultural pond and developing a park there, right? So the skatable art park, that you've seen a lot of different things, that's also right down the family way as well, right? Then another new development right there on Family Way is Prospect Road. All right. So if you add up the total value of all these projects within a mile radius of each other, you're talking about hundreds of billions of dollars. Now, why would somebody be putting hundreds of billions of dollars there if they didn't see some potential in that area? Right? So how can all these people from Colorado, from New York, and you don't see nobody in their grandma's house? They're willing to put $100 million complex right next to your grandma's house, but you don't want it. You won't live there. You won't even rent it out. You won't even paint the house. We got a free facade grant program. You won't even apply for it. You won't do nothing. You won't cut the grass except for 4 times a year when they harass you enough and fine you. That's crazy, right? So there's even more, right? So this is kind of my like wake up, come to Jesus moment, right? I'll never forget this moment. I woke up, I was reading the newspaper, and I was like, wait a minute. I looked out my window, and I saw next door to the used to be a house there, someone bought it, it's worked out. And I saw someone was about to build a $2 million apartment complex next door to my house. I was like, whoa, what am I doing? Let me reevaluate my life and what I need to be focusing on. Because if someone can build something that's worth $2 million right next to my house, I mean, I can do it too, right? So I'm just showing you this is the value that exists within these neighborhoods. Another huge development that's planned right now on Eugenia Street, 80 or 90 unit apartment complex is being planned on Eugenia Street as well. So what I'm saying is we're not talking about different neighborhoods. We're talking about all on the same little area, all on the greater family way, all within a scooter ride, a walk, a hot jog. Hundreds and hundreds of millions of dollars being invested, right? So what I'm saying is that is a great opportunity for people who understand how to seize those opportunities, right? And the only way you can seize those opportunities is to be smart, right? You have to communicate, you have to work together. What developers love to do, right? And I've been on both sides of this, right? What developers love to do is they love to take advantage of the fact that people do not communicate with each other and they do not know the value of their land. Right? So they know that, Mr. Johnny doesn't know that all of a sudden his land is now his own commercial. And, there's a 100-unit apartment complex planned to that. So all he's seeing is this house ain't worth nothing because, it's wood that was made in 1920. However, the land underneath that is worth something. Right? So maybe that physical structure may not be worth much, but the land is, right? So what I'm saying is there's a lot of opportunities for people who own land in these areas to get involved in these projects in some way, right? Now, obviously, sometimes it's better for people to sell, to be frank, right? So, I don't want to encourage people to just be like, I'm not selling to nobody, right? So you don't want that like deer in the headlights type vibe, right? Where you're like, okay, I'm not going to do anything, which is what happens a lot of times, right? So a lot of people in these situations, they're like, developers keep calling, and it's like, I don't know. And all of a sudden, your area ain't a hot area anymore, and now instead of taking out $100,000, you're getting zero. Right? So you don't want to be that person as well. So it's important to be smart, and it's important to partner with people who understand what's going on. Right? So that's why when you get a chance to meet people like Robin, people like myself, other people who are involved in real estate on a day-to-day basis, they can help you, right? They can help you to understand the value of the property and how to maximize that value so you can get the best out of your situation, right? Everyone's situation is different. Some people, look, we're all, it's called an investment horizon, right? So Some of us are in the early stage of our investment horizon where, you know, we see ourselves possibly having 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 years more to invest. So, you know, you're willing to do certain things because you can receive the return later. Certain people are at another stage of their investment horizon where they're ready to cash out, right? So I was in a meeting with the lady yesterday, and she was in that stage. She told me that one of her friends called her, and she has a house in the Virgin Islands, and she said she misses her. And she said that, you know, I would really love to retire and move to the Virgin Islands with my friend. And I said, you know what, I would love that too. You know, what's funny is, you know, a lot of times in negotiations, people always think of a zero-sum game. That someone has to win and someone has to lose, but a lot of times both of us can win.
Yes.
Right?
That's good.
And I think that's something that we have to negotiate. We have to understand that, listen, whenever I talk to someone, whenever I'm trying to purchase from someone, I ask them, what's going to make you happy? That's my question. What's going to make you happy? Now, what's going to make you happy might not make me happy, so we might not be able to make a deal. However, you know, we might be able to make a deal because sometimes, a lot of times, what people is going to make people happy is usually peace. Right? Peace of mind and quiet. And what you find is that 9 out of 10 is not money. Right? And that's one thing I really want you guys to understand. If you get involved in real estate, you can't just go splash cash. No one has enough money to splash cash. It's an obligation, especially in a city like Tallahassee. Right? There's a lot of people in the city who own a lot of property and have owned for a long time. What people don't realize is that Tallahassee has some of the richest black people in the state of Florida. Remember, FAMU's been open since 1887. So look at black people getting a paycheck for over 100-something years, right? Somebody's been the president, somebody's been the provost, somebody's been getting paid. And these people have money, several generations of money, right? You know, a lot of people don't really think about it. Sometimes, you know, we're like, okay, there's people right now, it's 2020, they're first generation, or maybe even second generation college students, people 5, 6, 7 generations of being educated and having salaries and working, right? So those people have a lot of money, they have a lot of old money, right? So you'll find people who own 10, 12, 15, 20, 30, 40, 50, 60 properties. And they'll be driving around in like, you know, a Honda with like a t-shirt and some dusty slacks, right? It's not the Ferrari and Lambo, it's not Miami, it's not South Beach. You'd be surprised at people around here who got a lot of money and a lot of power that comes with that, right? So this is what people don't realize, and I think this is what Robin was hitting on, is that when you hold your properties and you maintain your properties, you maintain power, right? So no matter how much cash I have, if I don't have any property, there's a limited amount of power I can exert in a situation. However, the fact that you own property gives you a lot of power. So for example, how do I know about all these projects? Because they send me letters in the mail asking me that I have a problem with them. Because I own property near there. And let's say I did have a problem with it, I'm like, nah, I don't like it. I could have went down there, said this, said that, said this and that, but that only happened because your property owned, right? So this is what's very, very important to understand, that ownership gives you a degree of power, right? The second thing beyond that is this, you know, and I'm actually working on writing a book about this, is that African Americans in general have a lot of what we call impactless wealth. Let me say that one more time.
Wow.
Impactless wealth. Meaning they have a lot of money, but that money makes no impact on their community. None. Right? How many professional athletes you see coming from the hood? And why is it still the hood? These people have hundreds of millions of dollars. But the neighborhood they grew up in is still the hood. And then one person with a hedge fund to come there and buy out that whole neighborhood. So how did that one person with a hedge fund have more power and more than someone who made hundreds of millions of dollars in the NBA, the NFL? Is because that person wanted to make an impact. Right? And they were intentional about their money. And what I'm saying is not enough of us are intentional about our money. So people won't just be like, okay, I want to invest with you because I believe in what you're doing. Some people will not. Most people are going to be like, what's my return? So how much am I going to make? And if I can make more than this, I'm going to do that. And I was like, cool, go ahead and do that. Right? So you have a whole bunch of money, but you're going to be driving past shambles every day. Right? And what are your kids going to inherit? Nothing. Right? Your kids gonna fight over your little inheritance, and after that, they're not gonna have anything to go back to, right? So we talk about generational wealth a lot, right? But what happens is this: your generational wealth, in particular when it comes to real estate, is only as strong as the neighborhood. right? So a lot of people inherited what became effectively worthless properties because the neighborhoods collapsed, right? So it doesn't matter. So let's say I work really hard and I accumulated 10 houses and I gave my kids 10 houses. Okay, that's wonderful, right? But what if the value of those houses just plummeted, right? So now those houses aren't worth anything. And that's what happens to a lot of black people. That's why we cannot close the wealth gap, right? So you have a lot of people who own a lot of property, but those properties are worth very little because the neighborhoods are not been invested in, right? So there's a lot to that, right? So a lot of it is on the city, a lot of it is on other governmental agencies, the federal government, state government, local government, but a lot of it falls right on you. So what I always say is this, there's only one thing you can control, and that's you. So what did you do? What did you do your best to make the neighborhood better? A lot of people, that answer is no. They did not do their best. They did not buy anything. They didn't fix their houses up. They didn't do a lot of different things that they could have did. And as a result of that, the neighborhood fell. And as a result of that, the wealth could not be passed on to the next generation, right? So that is, kind of just a brief overview, kind of like the state of the neighborhood. So let me talk about the opportunities, right? So right now, and one thing I don't like, anyone knows me, I do not like the word South Side because I feel like it just encompasses too many neighborhoods at one time that are very different, right? Bond is not like Jake Baker, South City is not like Cullen. I mean, there's so many different neighborhoods around here, like, that are all different, have different demographics, different backgrounds. It's just South Side to me is just home for where black people live, right? And I just don't like that, right? Because there's more to it than that, but I'm saying, I'm not from here. So when people say that, I just don't understand any type of discussion that talks about a whole region of the city in one conversation. That's senseless to me, right? Because you can't come up with any type of policy or procedure that works for all those different neighborhoods just in one slot, right? All these neighborhoods have different situations, right? So my particular area, where most of my investments are in bond, right? Most of my properties are in the bond neighborhood. And it has but bond is a particularly interesting neighborhood because of FAMU, right? So because of being right next to FAMU, also being right next to Lake Bradford, also being next to now FAMU Way, we're somewhat, and Orange Avenue, so we're pretty much cornered in, for lack of a better word, are surrounded by major corridors that a lot of development is happening in, right? But how do we get those developments to come into our neighborhood, right? That's what me and Sweetie always talk about, right? Because the easiest thing is this, right? So as a developer or someone who's just, in that realm, they might say, look, I'm gonna drop something down right on the edge of bond and say it's in bond, but not really in bond. I don't want to deal with in bond people and in bond problems, right? So I'll say it's in bond, so I can snatch some of that bond money or that bond opportunity zone or other things like that, right? However, it's not really having an impact within the community, right? So that's why I took it upon myself to do the flats, right? I didn't have to do that project. I could just build school housing right next to right where the property I have, right next to the school. I don't have to deal with affordable housing or anything like that. I didn't, but I wanted to get something inside my community, right? That's why I did a house on Old Street, because I wanted to get something inside my community. Because at the end of the day, I'm not gonna feel good if I leave my community. If I don't leave my community better than when I came in, right? So every developer, every investor should always at least put a portion of their portfolio within the community, right? You have your bigger projects that make your money, that's fine. You have to make money to be able to do more deals. However, there's always has to be some sense of giving back, and that sense of giving back still makes money, right? So it's not a charity for lack of a better word. But in the bigger scheme of things, of course, you probably could have made it work with something else. However, it's something that makes the community a better place, right? And I think that we all need to think about that because that's how you avoid having an impact as well, right? I can slap up a bunch of student housing, townhouses, make a bunch of money, move to Lauren or wherever, and come back and look at my property in bond and say I have property in bond, right? Or I can do something for the community and make leave the place a better place, right? So there's several different things that we've been working on outside of just, the flats was one of our projects. We also have some projects that we're working on Floral Street. We're trying to develop a business district on Floral Street. So we want to bring some businesses back to Floral Street. And what we want to do is we want to make Floral Street an extension and a connection of FAMU and the community. right? So FAMU, the Polkahorn Village, and other things are right across the street from Floral Street, right? The neighborhood comes right into Floral Street. The stores there, the barbershop there, there's other restaurants there, hair salons there. We want to bring a bunch of black-owned businesses back to that neighborhood, right? Back to that street, right? And we want the same type of investment that Gaines Street got. On Floral Street, not on Floral Street, right? We want intense, dense investment within one particular area, and I think it's something that can be very successful. So these are just other projects that we're working on. So we have several different projects that we're working on. Floral Street, projects on Wells Street as well. Robert and Shruti Perkins Way, formerly Gamble Street. So a few projects on Wells Street as well. So these are different things that we're working on. So in terms of kind of how I do things, I have two different ways that I do deals. So I have my original company, which is Vision Consulting and Investments, which is where I do kind of my bigger deals with my bigger investors. And then also I have New Era Investment, which is an investment group, right? Which is an investment group of kind of small balance investors. So people who don't have larger amounts, we kind of bring our funds together and we do smaller deals. So it's me, myself, it's me and a group of advisors kind of on the board, and we pull those funds together to do smaller scale projects. So kind of either way, right? So what I really simply like to do, and I don't know if you want to see me put him out, but I like to do joint ventures, right? So someone is in here who I'm doing a joint venture with right now. I don't know if he wants to acknowledge himself, but we're working on the house in Seminole Manor. I'm doing another joint venture in Frenchtown with some other people, and other deals like that, right? So what I would encourage you guys to do is look into joint ventures, look into investing, things like that, because that's how you're going to make an impact, right? Find people who are investing not just for the bottom line, but also the impact, right? And what you'll find out is that the impact actually improves your bottom line, right? Because I've seen many people invest in neighborhoods. They built a great development, but then the house next door to it collapsed. It became a drug house, and all of a sudden their investment went down. And what you'll find is that a lot of people who are investors, that's actually the property that you end up picking up, is ones that people thought were good, and the neighborhood around it collapsed. And then they didn't see the value in it, and other people had to come and bring it back. So this is what you see a lot of, right? So this in terms of opportunity, right? This is, in my opinion, a generational opportunity, right? You will probably never see that much investment concentrated near FAMU or anywhere near Bond, let me say that, for years, right? We haven't even talked about what's going to happen on Lake Rapid, right? That's a whole nother humongous amount, millions and millions of dollars coming down Lake Rapid, right? So FAMU Way, Gaines Street, Lake Bradford, we even talked about Orange Avenue, what's happening on Orange Avenue, right? FAMU's getting bigger and bigger. Think about it, FAMU has LeBron James hubbing them. As soon as the state lets FAMU go, FAMU will have 20,000 students. FAMU will have 20,000 students tomorrow. But I don't want to get into that, but what I'm saying is the growth in this area is tremendous, right? And even not even because of the growth, right? Think about it. Right now, most FAMU schools don't live anywhere near FAMU. There's very limited housing near FAMU. So just bringing FAMU schools back in that area is creating a whole other opportunity, right? You talk to FAMU schools, one of the famous favorite clubs right now is GEO. Right down the street from campus. We never had that. When I was in school, wasn't none of that, walking out, all that type of stuff. Late night library was there, though. But that was on a Tuesday night, the room was kind of far for walking, But anyway, long story short, just having those type of things right there next to the community, and finding a way to ensure that not only FAMU students, but also the community benefit are really important. So right now we still have a tremendous amount of rundown and undervalued properties right next to these developments, right? So anywhere near a lot of these major developers, you see a lot of properties, a lot of undervalued properties. There's still a lot of vacant lots where homes, apartments, or businesses can be built. There's still a lot of homes that can be converted into business. Me and Terrence were out of business today. That was a house that was turned into a business. And that's what we need a lot more of in our community. We don't need to build shopping complexes that gotta have stormwater and 1,200 parking spots for one. We don't need that. We can turn these houses into businesses, right? Like people did back in the day. What we have to do is we have to look at the best practices from the past. When were people winning and how were they winning? They weren't winning by having to buy a whole street full of houses and tear it down and build a parking lot to build a building. They were winning when you could turn a house into a business.
I'm gonna throw something in there because you're right about that, but what's happening in communities like ours, like I had somebody who reached out, who just happened to know the work we're doing, who's trying to buy property to bring a business, and city is saying, oh, let's register because you can't do it, right? And so I'm like, no, we worked on, you know, overlaying and rezoning the area so that we can have those mixed commercial use in with the residential property, and had to send an email to say, we want this, it's in our plan, right? So knowing that, how many people are trying to invest, maybe, which brought up in my mind, how many people are trying to come in and do something that are being discouraged because those who haven't been connected to the work are answering the phone and responding, right? So we have to do a better job of actually telling our own story and saying, hey, this is what we want, and being a little more forward about those things.
I mean, it's nothing more beautiful than neighborhood scale businesses, right? Those are everyone's favorite. That's why people love places like New York, and, you know, DC, where you just walk outside and grab a piece of pizza, or, you know, this and that. You know, that's what people like. You don't have to drive everywhere. I'm tired of driving. I don't want to drive nowhere again. I don't want to park nowhere. I don't want to have to deal with tickets. I don't want to deal with none of that, right? I want to be able to walk out of my house, go get a drink, go get whatever, and walk back home, right? And these are the type of communities we can create because the price of housing is still so low that it's more viable, right? People paying like $10,000 a month, $8,000 a month in rent on some of these commercial buildings, right? They can just buy a house and turn it into a business. I mean, it's literally crazy how much people are paying because of, you know, the way zoning works. So what I'm saying is bringing back on neighborhood scale of business, that's what gives the minority entrepreneurs a chance, right? It's hard to rent a spot on Main Street. It's hard to rent a spot in some of these higher priced areas because, you know, and I'm not going to blame the developers. I'm saying, look, it costs a lot to build a building, so they got to charge. They got to charge what they got to charge to make their money back, right? So what I'm saying is, you know, at the end of the day, there's other ways to do it. And one of the great ways is neighborhood scale businesses. So I think that's something that definitely can be good. So another thing you can do is pool funds together to make collective action in larger scale projects. Because fundamentally, you have to make larger scale projects, right? We need more housing. The more we play around and don't build housing, the more it's going to get expensive, right? The reason why housing is expensive is because there's more demand and supply. I mean, this is very simple, right? Anyone who's a landlord will tell you, post an apartment for rent, you get 500 people applying. I mean, what are you going to do, right? There's no way to distinguish people who see like, well, maybe I should have raised the price. I mean, that's what's about it. And then also, what people don't realize is that, you know, and the people who invest in this, look, the days of calling Uncle Pee-wee and John and them and giving them 20, 30 bucks to come fix something, these people want $200 just to walk in your house, right? I'm talking about to fix the toilet, right? We ain't talking about like, let's see how AC goes out. You gotta pay $10,000, $8,000 for an AC. Or your roof, you gotta pay $12, $13. It ain't like back in the day, you call your boy and y'all throw the shingles up there and get, who days is over. So what I'm saying is, you cannot afford to have these kind of, you know, these really, really low cost situations because you can't maintain the property, right? And it's very sad. I'm gonna tell you what the result of that is. So again, another thing I would say a lot is, there's a really high cost of low rent, right? There are people living in houses with active leaks. I promise you. I just bought a house that had mold in every corner of that house that someone was living in. For years. And why did they call the city? They didn't call the city because they knew that the landlord would say, okay, all right, I'm gonna fix it. Then I'm gonna raise the rent. Right? Or maybe in their lease or whatever, maybe they couldn't end their lease, but they ended eventually, and then where they gonna move to? They can't afford anywhere else. Right? So there's people right now, as we go to sleep tonight, there's people who sleep in their houses with broken windows. There's people who sleep in their houses that have open roofs. Wide open roofs. Wide open roofs. No insulation, no anything. I'm telling you, some people will be shocked. Some people know who've been around, but people don't know, you'll be shocked at the conditions people are living in because there's not enough of supply of housing. Right? So we need to increase the supply, so we do need these projects, right? But what we want is we want ownership in these projects. So what I tell people is, don't be afraid to get involved in a larger project, but be on a smaller scale, but still be in the game, right? So this is what I learned. I've been around a lot of people who are on a lot of big deals, right? They're like, look, man, sometimes only have 1%, 2%, but I'm making money every time. Right? And because my name was on that deal, now I got the credibility and the track record. So now when another deal comes along, I can say, well, look, I was on this deal. Right? So don't be afraid. This is another thing that happens. People are like, okay, yeah, I'm gonna develop my land, but I'm gonna wait till I save up, $100,000, and then we make, $3,000 a year. So they're gonna have to save for 33 years to save 100,000, and you know how it is. So what I'm saying is, instead of just calling somebody who has 100, that's somebody who has 100,000 right now, who's looking for an investment. I think one thing people underestimate is how many people are actually looking for an opportunity and can't find it. Actually, right now, and any investor will tell you this, there's more people looking for deals than there are deals, meaning that the access to money is higher than it's ever been. Right? Even banks. I had a bank call me today and said, hey, you got another house? I'm like, well, I might have one. And, they can't find people to loan money to. Right? So now they're calling me and asking me to give me a loan. You see what I'm saying? So this is the type of things that are starting to happen in the market because there's a shortage of inventory, and that's what we need to. This is a historic opportunity to kind of take advantage of that, right? So let me talk a little bit about the power of collecting investing. It's more efficient and a lot more profitable. It requires less of each individual's money. Then the most important part is you have shared duties and responsibilities, right? Instead of me having to be the project manager or the financier, I gotta cut the grass, I gotta do everything. Now we can split these duties up, and at the end of the day, you have a lot higher long-term impact, right? Here's some of the needs that I think we really have. We need a lot more what I call targeted wholesaling, right? People need to go into these neighborhoods and find targeted deals and get these people to sell it, or do something, right? Get some joint venture, get something going on. A lot of people are interested in wholesaling. I always get a lot of wholesalers to send me stuff. They send me stuff in like neighborhoods I'm not interested in, right? So I'm just like, look, man, we need to be more targeted here about getting neighborhood and properties in strategic areas and not letting them just kind of just go willy-nilly. Because at the end of the day, people get upset about like who ends up buying the properties. But what I'm saying is, if you're not targeted about getting your particular properties, you won't get it, right? Obviously, we need more access to capital. There's a lot more funding that could be available. These banks could loan a lot more than they actually do. A lot of other financial institutions could loan a lot more than they do. We have to stop acting like $1 million is a lot of money in real estate when it's not. It's not. It's not. It's not. It's not. So when someone says that they have $1 million for the entire city to split, that should be a joke to you, right? There are $1 billion houses there are multiple $1 million houses in this neighborhood, in this city. So when someone says we have $1 million for 20 people to split, or for 50 people to split, what are we gonna do with that? Have a good vacation, hang out, what are we gonna do? Right? So what I'm saying is, we have to stop acting like, even though, obviously, you say $1 million, not that they like that, not saying it's not a lot of money, but in the bigger scheme of what we're trying to do is not enough. It's not enough. I mean, they are spending $1 million putting sidewalk and lights on my street. $2 million putting sidewalks and lights on my street. So how do you expect me to take $1 million and split it between everybody I know and create affordable housing for the city? It ain't happening, right? So what I'm saying is, these are things that we have to do. We have to have more access to capital. We get a lot more grants for business development because that's the key to bring these neighborhoods back, right? If you ever notice, and I've had the opportunity to be in a lot of neighborhoods that have been brought back. And I've been in neighborhoods that was a lot worse than any neighborhood in Tallahassee that got brought back. What brings it back is businesses. Amen. Destinations.
That pays for everything.
You need a place. I want to come to Frenchtown because I want to go get some barbecue. I want to get a drink. I want to hang out. I want to do this. I want to do that. A lot of people forget is these neighborhoods used to have a little bars, a lot of little hangouts, little pool halls, little this, little that. Now we don't got none of that. All we got is churches. That's it. We don't have nothing. They're broken. Nothing wrong with church. God bless. I'm not listening. God bless everybody. However, what I'm saying is there ain't nothing there. That's gonna make you want to come and have a good time. Besides Top Flight, of course. God bless Top Flight. But anyway, what I'm saying is we need business, right? Because that's what brings you to a neighborhood. So for example, it's simple as that, right? We can look at best practices. Look at Stop the Road. Look at Happy Motor. Look at Poof. Look at other places around there, right? Those are bringing people who never came to this area back to the area. right? So why we can't do the same thing in Frenchtown? Why we can't do the same thing in Vine? Why we can't do the same thing in other areas? I mean, we know the reasons why, but I'm saying that these are things that need to be subsidized and we need help with, because that will bring those neighborhoods back, and then it will be a demand on the housing. There's no shortage of affordable housing. There's a shortage of housing in desirable neighborhoods. So there are many people who will not, I don't care if it's free, they won't live in certain these neighborhoods. They'll pay, I've seen people pay $2,000 a month for rent versus buying a house in some of these neighborhoods. People make good money, very well educated people, right? So it's something that's very important that we need to make sure that we get these businesses going, we get things going, so we really can develop back these neighborhoods. And in terms of economic opportunity, is that what you want to do is, so people who are investors and talk about the investment side of it is, this is what you want to do. You want to buy houses in these neighborhoods, then advocate for these type of things, and then the property value go up, and you are able to reap the benefits of that, right? Last thing is this, right? And I'll leave it on this. I want everybody to think carefully about this, right? A lot of these neighborhoods, I think one thing we didn't really talk about is the racial components of a lot of this, right? We need to ask ourselves, do we want, if it's mathematically possible, to integrate, suburban areas and also repopulate black neighborhoods with nothing but black people, right? And that's one of the things I feel like is kind of the elephant in the room. We don't talk about the racial components of the neighborhoods, right? So when people talk about, Bond, they talk about first time, this, and the other, these are black neighborhoods, right? These are neighborhoods that have always been black strongholds within the community, but the problem is you don't have enough black people wanting to move back to these neighborhoods, and that's what we need, right? So it's something very important for black professionals, black people who are doing well to consider these neighborhoods, to buy houses in neighborhoods, to bring them back, because these neighborhoods are not poor neighborhoods, right? They were developed by very professional people, very successful people. Some of the most successful people in the state of Florida built houses in Bond, in Frenchtown, and all those other neighborhoods. Very, very successful people. So let's do it again. Let's bring it back and let's work. So anyone want to contact me, my number is 850-597-3233, or you shoot me an email if you're interested in getting involved in some investment projects or just want to learn about real estate in general, feel free to reach out.
Thank you. Appreciate that. He's sweating bullets up here. Just really quick in the interest of time, were there any questions? I'll take 2 questions if there are any. Okay.
Oh, I forgot. I do have a question. So you talked a lot of great stuff, you dropped a lot of great nuggets, thank you so much. So there was someone that was interested in actually getting involved right now. I know you said people don't have a lot of cash to throw around. What might one think of as a number value to be an investor or join one of these joint ventures or buy property? I know you talk about tax deeds all the time, Mr. Barber, but what would one have to get in their mind as liquid cash to actually get involved in some of this real estate opportunity?
I would say usually like 5,000, somewhere around there. 5,000 to 10,000. I mean, as much as you can get, but I would say the minimum would be about 5,000. That'll get you in there. Now, the great thing is, and I'm not a real estate agent, but people who want to just buy their own personal first property, about $5 grand or so, that'll get you in the door, as long as you got decent credit. We're really going to have to have decent credit with agent, you got to have some credit.
Yeah.
You can work with a couple people, but not everybody.
We have some questions from viewers. What solutions are there for the low percent of owner occupancy and high percent of absentee owners?
Who asked that?
Somebody online.
So the solution to that, you have to have, the city has to have a more aggressive policy on vacant properties, right? It can't be a buddy system where this is my boy, it don't matter, right? It has to matter, right? So I'll give you an example. Oakland has a policy against that, Oakland, California, where basically if the property is vacant, you have to pay taxes. Same thing in Cincinnati got some sort of policy, I don't know what it is. Well, listen, I get a bill every week from this property, so I gotta put somebody in there, right? So what I'm saying is the city has to make vacancy an unattractive option. But right now, it's a very attractive option because you don't have to do anything, right? There's no penalty for vacant properties. All you gotta do is like, so the code enforcement process, if you mow the grass once a year, then you won't get fined.
No, I think they're talking about, say, instance, Providence. So right now,
Yeah.
Providence has more renters than owners in Providence, so.
So here's the problem, right? So when the reason why you have that is because homeowners don't wanna buy it, right? Now, there's a lot of reasons why, but the biggest thing is that we need homeowners to wanna buy there. As soon as homeowners buy in those neighborhoods, then you'll see a change. But the reason why is because investors can buy the houses cash because a lot of the houses are in bad condition. So what we need is we need more programs that help people to get their house to a point where it's financeable. Right, so because some of these the houses, they're old, the system's old, can't get insurance, can't get policy, so all people can buy them are cash buyers. So then that way makes it difficult, that's why you get most of them, owned by investors instead of homeowners.
You know, the funny thing about that situation, though, I looked at the property information in Providence, and a lot of them, those people, companies, are in like Miami or from out of town. Yeah.
What I was trying to say is that what's particular with that situation is that a lot of the people in Providence are renters, and the people who own those properties are living in like Miami.
Right.
Like residential real estate developers. And the funny thing is and they see what's coming, because a lot of the things you were saying was just, I touched on, because with the Gateway project and what they're doing with the Mag Lab, those property values are going to go through the roof.
Yeah, I mean, and the thing is, you have to have like some type of, you have to have some law and order in this neighborhood. So I owned a house on, what was, I can't remember what street that was, somewhere in Providence. And when I say people was doing whatever they wanted to do, and not like, whatever, talking about whatever they wanted to do. So it's like, as a homeowner, I can't really say.
Look, Chris, yeah, we talked about Frenchtown. Y'all excuse me what I'm gonna say, we just said. I built houses next door to the crack house and across the street from the whole house. And when I built those houses, family moved in, crack house left,
Gone.
whole house left. So it works. I mean, you just.
New construction. New construction will do. I would agree with you on that. So for taking vacant lots for new construction, but renovating these houses, some of these older houses that are like, 600 square feet, like, it's just, the math sometimes becomes a little bit difficult, on a resale, like, it's only, I mean, it can be difficult. But I did one before, so having that experience of doing a house in that neighborhood, I know that the biggest thing is just the surrounding properties and a lot of craziness that goes on, and you're right, the absentee owners. Because I remember I had a property across from the property I had, the dude had a 12-foot fence. And it's like, so I'm pulling up with my residents or people I'm trying to get to rent the house. I'm like, why is it a jail across the street? Is that a person? Like, but there's no policy.
12-foot privacy fence?
A 12-foot barbed wire fence.
Barbed wire fence.
Last comment from Robin, because we gotta roll out.
Well, I just wanted to make a comment about you saying about properties being able to get financed because of the dilapidation. They do have renovation loans as well. So I think homeowners also need to get educated, and we need to get that information out to the forefront, because you can buy property and build equity better by doing a renovation on the property.
The smartest thing, and I would encourage all my real estate agents, and I've been a real estate agent before, so I've been there. I know that it's hard to convince your first-time home buyers that they don't need to mention in Cologne, because that's what everybody wants. Everybody wants to live in a gated subdivision with their dog and all that other type of stuff. And, that's fine. What I'm saying is a lot of equity can be made buying these houses. And if you keep those properties and rent them out for years and years, and they'll actually pay for your house in Cologne. So now you never even have to pay a mortgage.
Yeah, I just want to add to her comment. It's actually renovation grants, free money. Sometimes it's not a lot, but it's grants, free money.
I agree.
Has this been beneficial?
Yes.
Please give Chris and Robin. If you wanna reach out, Chris, what was your information again?
info@newerafla.com. That's my email. Or just on Facebook.
5059733.
Put up on the screen, Chris and Robin, your info.
info@ifliprenters.com.
Thank you all. Next week, we will be at Happy Motoring for the finale pitch competition. We have 2 entrepreneurs that will be going neck and neck, toe to toe for all of the prizes. That'll be at 6 p.m. At Happy Motoring. Thank you to Domi Station for serving as our IT and startup week and all of the things. We appreciate you all so much for having us live tonight on Facebook. And thank you to all of you. Again, hopefully this was really beneficial for you. Please come out next week, 6 o'clock, 6 to 8, Happy Motoring, meet some new folks. Listen to these pitches. You might get some ideas or be able to glean something from it for your personal business. Thank you, Running Buzz. Thank you, LaCora. Thank you, Terrence L. Barbara. Come on. What do you think?
Nicole, I know you got, go ahead.
I'll take it from there. Okay, only because I got a live at 8:30, so I gotta run. It's what we were on Wednesday for conversations with Nicole tonight, so thank you.
How can they tune in?
YouTube, Facebook, and on Greater Works Network on Roku.
What are y'all talking about tonight?
Loss, healing, and forgiveness.
Ooh, you know the hardest person I ever had to forgive? Myself.
I know you.
Hey, listen, thank you all for coming out, man. This is Working Class Wednesday since December of 2016. My name is Terrence L. Barbara. I appreciate y'all. This conversation need to continue. Thank you so much to Robin. Thank you so much to Christopher. Thank you so much, Christine. Where's Talika? Is she leave? Oh, hey, Talika over there. That's why. Listen, man, these conversations have to continue. I'm trying to be as impactful and as intentional as I possibly can. I do believe, and I think that Chris Someone said it tonight, that we need more Black businesses in Black communities. Not for the lack of saying that, you know, Costco, we don't own Costco, we don't own, not saying that small businesses everywhere are important, but until that's the infrastructure that is the most impactful in communities of color, and until we see that, it is what it is. Segue, since this is my platform, I'm not on county property. I am right now running for Leon County Commission District 1. It is in census year. You do not have to be in my district to sign a petition. I have petitions over here. Wave your hand, Tasha. Wave your hand. If you would, if you are a registered voter in Leon County, would you please sign a petition for that? That's all. How you doing, brother? Have you signed a petition yet? Yes, sir. Oh, you need to sign one. What about you? Marche, man, we got all kinds of this young man. Listen, raise your hand, Marche. I want to give a shout out to Marche's catering, man. Listen, he's doing the feeding on. Marche, listen, we don't want to see you. You real hard, you don't like to play that. He out here shaking his head right now. Listen, you know what I'm spend my Thanksgiving? I'm gonna spend my Thanksgiving in Frenchtown. Y'all keep hearing the name Frenchtown. I'm gonna spend my Thanksgiving in Frenchtown because I don't have much family now. But this young man here, because he's gonna be out feeding folks that need a meal on Thanksgiving. So we won't be on Thanksgiving Day in Frenchtown feeding folks. We have a Christmas drive coming up. If y'all want to get this content, we are accepting new toy, everything that you want a child to have for Christmas. Make sure you get with them. Make sure y'all sign a petition. Please, if you are, you know, I cover the foods, don't make them be sitting out. Please take the sandwiches, the fruit. Don't drink all the wine out there, they don't smoke. But anything else, y'all. You gotta drink all of it. Anything else, thank y'all so much. Thank you to Mr. Daniel. Thank you to Brian, Be Easy Graphics. Thank you so much for coming. Thank you to everyone. And y'all can hang out for 2 more minutes. We're gonna wrap it up. We got some tech stuff we have to take care of. Thank y'all for coming out and get Happy Motor Instant.